Welcome to the Diversity Pivot Podcast. This season, we are talking with leaders inside organizations focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're talking with them about best practices and proven tools for positive change. We are also sharing vignettes from our new book, Allyship in Action, to help leaders take real, tangible action on DEI right away. This work is important because all humans need to feel seen, heard, and belonging in the workplace. Emotions. Emotions can be tough. They can be tough in the workplace. They can be tough in the personal spaces. And as human beings, we are naturally very emotional. We like to think that we've evolved, that we're rational thinkers, that emotions have no place at work, or, take the emotion out of it. I know it's something I've been told before. But the truth is, we are very much still in a primitive state in our brain. And our limbic system that's responsible for our emotions is still very, very active, much more so than our neocortex that's responsible for rational thought. And because of that, we are very much ruled by our emotions. And if we're not careful to understand our emotions, they can really be risky in the allyship conversation. Because of course, this is emotional. Inclusion is human. It's a feeling. It's not something you can put pen to paper on and fully describe. And everyone's going to have a different perspective about what it means to be inclusive and their perceptions around inclusion because it's connected to an emotion. So emotions absolutely have a place in our workplaces and in our personal spaces. But how do we bring emotions in a productive way? And that's really the call to action for allies. And this is why this is the 5th chapter of our book, Allyship in Action, 10 Strategies to Live Inclusively, which also has a companion activity guide to unpack this. And especially with emotions, there's some really meaty activities we have in the book and in that companion activity guide. Because understanding our emotions is important. I recently went through social emotional learning certification. If you're not familiar, sometimes people shorthand that to SEL. It's been somewhat a controversial subject as far as how it's taught in schools, which shocks me because as I got to know the content, it was super helpful for me understanding my emotions, understanding I am not my emotions, that my emotions are just a reflection of my emotional state. And of course, our children, the people around us, our coworkers are going to feel emotions in all aspects of their life. And they need to bring that emotion to conversations as long as it's respectful. Okay, so I'll just give you a window. This actually isn't in the book, but a short story of something that happened since writing the book. I was in my daughter's classroom. And, because of COVID, I haven't been in the classroom in a couple of years now almost. And I was just looking around the walls. And I'm very fortunate I live in a school district that practices social emotional learning and SEL. And there were all these worksheets of emotion mapping. And it was just so beautiful. They have different colors for different emotions with red, for anger and some frustration behaviors, blue for like calm, maybe tired, green, more for positive, optimistic. And there's yellow. There's a lot more to it. I'm not doing it a full service here. But the kids had articulated dozens of emotions, and not just the simple ones, mad, sad, angry. I think as adults, we limit our language around emotion to just, a finite few emotions, but they're way more complex than that. And I loved seeing this in her classroom. And more importantly, I love the conversations we're having as she is learning social emotional learning. She will say to me, Mom, I think you're in the red zone right now, or you seem triggered to me right now. And that language is so powerful because she's really holding up a mirror for me to understand my emotional state and to process it and to empathize with the emotions that I might be feeling because they might be triggered from something that happened. Right? So talking actively about our emotions is really helpful as an ally because you're going to get triggered. There are going to be hard conversations that are going to make you feel guilty, perhaps even something strong like shame or angry. When someone shares a hard story with me about the adversity of their diverse experience, I get upset. And that can be helpful, but it also showing up in a angry body position and tone of voice can also be completely harmful to the other person in the conversation, even if they had done some wrongdoing, because they're also going to get triggered. And as human beings, when we're triggered, we go to our limbic system, we go to the place of emotion, and we can't rationally think. It's called an amygdala hijack. And so our prefrontal cortex, our rational thought capacity actually turns off. And that's why we might say or do things that we might regret later. So some of the techniques we talk about in the book, Allyship in Action, for emotional intelligence, or the work I'm loving right now is Emotional Agility by Susan David, is to own our emotions and to separate them from our identity, but to own the emotion we're feeling and to really more robustly have vocabulary around emotions. So we're not just dealing with like the basic emotions. Behind anger might be something much, much deeper, right? Overwhelm, shame, frustration, right? So get a little bit more granular with the emotion that we're feeling. And then to give yourself some space. Rarely when we're in a heavy emotional state, is it the best time to have a conversation with somebody or to try to resolve the situation that might be at hand. Oftentimes, if we come in hot to a situation or very emotionally triggered, we will trigger the other person. They, generally speaking, get defensive, make excuses, play the blame game, find ways to not make it their problem. And then we end up at square one and we get frustrated. See, why did I even do that? There was no point. Has anyone been in a conversation like that? I have. And then it makes me not want to do it again. And so much of active allyship is confronting hard things, is having hard conversations, is being able to hold people accountable around you, right? But we've got to be able to rein in our emotions. And for me, what that looks like are doing things that calm me. Right? If I become triggered, and my triggers are, when someone says something that I don't agree with, or someone says we're going to do something and don't do it. It's very frustrating to me. And so oftentimes I'll take some deep breaths. And if I don't have a lot of time, that might be it. I'll try to walk it off a little bit if I can, even if I'm in a meeting, walking it off on the phone or finding a way to move around a little bit to burn off that energy. If I have more time and I can sleep on it, that's even better because then I can emotionally calm down. I might take a bath, go for a long walk outside. It just depends on the magnitude of the emotions that I'm processing. But give myself space between the event that's happening that's triggered me and the resolution that needs to occur. So emotional agility is a powerful tool as an ally. I welcome you to better understand tools like social emotional learning, Susan David's work, other tools that we reference in our book, Allyship in Action, because we have to understand our emotions and bring our emotions to the conversation in a way that's going to be helpful to show up as an active ally. So if you're enjoying this series, please, if you haven't yet, check out the book Allyship in Action on Amazon. It has a companion activity that's also available. And you can dive in. Those are activities you can do with your work group, with your personal groups, at home, at work. It's really designed to be a cohesive experience because allyship doesn't have an on and off switch. It never did. Got to be practicing inclusion in all assets of our life. So thank you for following this. Stay tuned. We're going to keep these mini-sodes coming. We'd love to hear your stories, your ideas, the feedback from the book and the podcast series. We're thankful for you, allies. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Allies are necessary for positive change. If you are on the journey to becoming an ally, we invite you to participate in our brand new Lead Like an Ally online program or get a copy of our new book, Allyship in Action, available on Amazon. Both are helpful tools that meet leaders where they're at and help provide tools for professional and personal settings. Head over to nextpivotpoint.com to get started today.